Very good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome you all for this exclusive webinar on use of technology in the tax function. The Chamber acknowledges the support of Mr. Niraj Hutheesing, founder and MD, Cygnet Infotech, for accepting our invitation to address at this session. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
The session is organized under the aegis of our Indirect Taxes Expert Committee, chaired by Mr. Badrinath, who is the partner Singhvi and Unni LLP, and co-chaired by Mr. Arun Ramchandran, Head Finance, Tata Consumer Products Limited, and Ms. Mamta Anand, partner, Indirect Taxes, Deloitte Touch Tomato, and mentored by Mr. P.V. Srinivasan, partner and chief mentor, previous advisors. We especially acknowledge the support of Mr. Prakash for structuring and initiating this session. Thank you very much, sir. Now I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Devarajan, our president, BCIC, to just a few words, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this seminar. And especially technology is a key word for us, BCIC. When 3 days back, we had a manufacturing conclave in which technology of manufacturing was discussed in detail in terms of what's happening, how to become Atmanirbhar, how to get into our, because that's the most important thing to get more GST. So business has to grow, and GDP is growing and business is growing. And BCIC is a very, very important association, which has got both big companies like Toyota, Volvo, TVS, Bosch, and many of the small scale and medium scale industries to education institutions, startups, name anything of the financial institutions, tax consultants. So I think the combination of everything only will make the business upfront. So our main intention, we have got something like 850 members in our areas, and we have more than 250 seminars a year.
Wow.
So in all the areas, whether it's taxation, insurance, GST, I think we had a very important role in discussion GST. So 1 month back, we involved everyone together to fill. The main intention is sharing of information, and at the same time, how we can work together, and especially the government, ourselves, because it cannot be done by any single team. It cannot be done by OEM, it cannot be an MSC, it has to be a joint effort. So that's the main intention. We have to work very closely with the government in terms of the EV policy, whether gig policy is another thing we're talking about, the wage, another common wage scheme is coming up in a big way, and which will get affected. So we are a very dynamic and very simple team in our area. So today, definitely technology in every area, whether startup, we have a startup awards, we have Women Leadership Award. We have a leadership talk every month. That's the area where, because things are changing so fast. And if you're not in league with that, 250 is too small a seminar. In fact, we need to know, understand every area. But the main intention is how we are able to apply. And we have Industry 4.0 where we apply and share technology in that area. So technology is a very core word for us. And we feel India is growing, GDP is definitely growing. And to survive, we need to know about the technology. So that's the main thing of BCIC. So welcome you, sir, for this, and thank you very much for your time. And but thank you, Badri, for your team. Excellent. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'll take it from here. As our president was just telling, it is not just about understanding technology. It's about being sure how we are implementing it also. Maybe that is what we are trying to understand today, sir. Because today the words are, I'll add one thing which Mr. Niraj was mentioning to me some 10 minutes back. It's about, say, a rule engine, AI, ML. I think it is. There is no paragraph that is complete without using those words today.
Exactly.
But how much of it are we really applying in the day-to-day activities of ours is why we are here today. In fact, that is what Mr. Niraj will be walking us through in terms of, when we also requested him, sir, thank you so much for being here with us today. He, in fact, outlined what he'd like to share with our members. And let me just read it out. It is very interesting to see that. Is digitization in tax as an option or a compulsion? Then how are governments in India and across the globe looking at tax digitization, the readiness and the complex structure adopted by the government, convergence of DT and IDT, more structures will be decided at transaction level. How prepared are corporates and tax professionals? Single source data. I mean, tax architecture and the roadmap around the same. Use of AI in tax technology. Okay. So this is what we are going to be hearing from him about today. Of course, keeping GST in mind, because as all of us know, GST is a technology not enabled but a driven law. You know, like 2 days back, there was Allahabad High Court which actually said it is about a registration related matter. Court has come down very heavily to say that, are we becoming slaves of the technology? Because today government is using technology in every possible way. Are we becoming slaves was the question which was kind of put by the High Court. So with that, sir, authorities are actually going double down in terms of issuing notices. Today, the number of notices that have been issued in GST in specific there is no parallel ever. Probably the number of notices issued under GST would have been the cumulative notices issued under all indirect tax laws for its entire lifetime. Pardon me, but I don't want to exaggerate, but I'll not be surprised if that is true, right? So that is the that is the extent to which government is using technology today.
Transparency makes it that way.
Maybe the tools are available. So I think so. It's question of you want to travel maybe 1,000 miles, but initially when you had to go on a horse cart or a chariot or something like that, it would take more time. But today you have better vehicles, so you are able to travel much faster. So the tools are available. Now you are using it or you are misusing it. It's up to an individual.
Yes, sir. Sir, with that, may I request you?
Sure. I think
we have Mr. Niraj here who will walk us through on that. So thank you so much once again, sir.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And really a pleasure. And thank you, Prakash sir. Thank you, therein sir, for inviting us and having this conversation. So we do this conversations on a daily basis into multiple events. So I normally kind of do 2 events a week. But when we talk into such a kind of a forum, the discussion becomes a little bit different, wherein you are able to share informally. Here, I don't have to sell Cygnet. And that is a kind of a major difference for me, where it becomes a very informal conversation with the formality involved into it. So let's make it interactive. Whatever slide, whatever questions you have, don't hesitate, just kind of ask into that.
Sure.
And the slides are just a guidelines, but I will try and go into as much depth I can into that, and we'll try and take it up onto that. The first thing is I'll go with a very simple slide, and this is something somebody shared on WhatsApp with me. And this is the biggest problem that we as a taxpayer or we as a chartered accountant fraternity, and I'm not a chartered accountant, but I'm part of this fraternity on a day in and day out basis. So I will put it across as a fraternity. This is our biggest challenge. And we are slaves of Excel. Let us accept it. We are slaves of Excel. And because of that, the data which is being stored, where it is being stored, what it has been done with it, nobody knows. And this is our biggest problem in terms of replying to the notices that are coming in. So first point, I would recommend to everybody, at least have a single source of truth. Even if it is in Excel, it has to be in a common Excel. It cannot be in anybody's Excel. So there has to be the first challenge that we need to do, because when you have to reply to a notice, how will you get the data? And the biggest challenge for the industry today per se is they don't have a single source of truth. Now, so many times I'm being asked that, okay, we have a data, we have bought a ASP, GSP solution, and everything is there into that. But is it kind of connected? Do you have multiple transactions into a same portal? Can you extract it? Can you go to the next slide? So can you really do that? And that is a challenge which everybody is facing. And you have different sources, you extract data. Kind of as a technology providers, we have sold you many different systems, but none of the systems talk to each other. And we have created a big chaos for you. So that's a kind of sometimes it's a selfish motive. Sometimes it's more of it that, okay, it creates more problem. You will take more services. But today the taxpayers are tired, and the type of notices, people's holidays are kind of gone for a toss. The festivals have gone for a toss, and tax teams have literally gone crazy. And something needs to be conducted. And when I talk to the CFOs and tax heads, I always say that you have a multiple mandate. The first, clear the mess that has happened over the last 6 years. That is priority number 2. Priority number 2 is don't allow the mess to happen today. And priority number 3 is visualize what is going to come in the future and be prepared for it. So that is something which is going to happen. Now, everywhere across the globe, compliance is moving to a real-time basis. So India, and whether we call the GST a success or a failure, that is for us to decide. For world, it is a huge success. Means you go to, I am today talking to multiple different government authorities in Southeast Asia, in Gulf countries and other areas. They call us just to know what is the GST experience. And they ask us only 2 things. Will e-invoicing, bringing invoicing increase our revenue? That is the one. Will bringing data at a transaction level for input tax credit remove the revenue leakages? And some of the countries are kind of even going beyond that. What they are saying is that we'll bring these 2 things in, and we will also correlate payments with the input tax credit that you have taken. So at every transaction, you can take input tax credit or claim input tax credit provided you made the payment of that invoice. And you have to give us the digital payment evidence into the transaction report. Now, this is where the world is moving. We need to be prepared for it. Governments are spending much more in terms of bringing that. If I take today's GST and there is a public knowledge. You go to the GSTN portal, there is a section, interaction with vendors. All the RFPs are published over there. And if you see the RFPs, the amount of investment that they are doing in additional hardware, in increasing the data center, they are literally preparing for a massive upswing in terms of the reporting. B2C is going to come in, whether we accept or we don't expect, it's going to come in. So this is something which has happened. Another area which is a problematic is that up till now for governance, we have relied on ERPs. And ERPs, we have become slaves of ERPs. Let me put it across into that fashion. That ERP gives you reporting as a business vertical basis because it was always for the outward side of what we want to do. How do we grow our business? How do we bring in the governance onto that? So we were kind of looking at a global system which was business verticals. The challenge today is we need to do it state-wise and we need to do it country-specific. ERPs are failing. And that is a kind of a major change that they no more can be a single source of truth for us. And that is a major problem. Second challenge is along with means like ERPs, e-commerce sales has come in for everybody. A kind of multiple different ways of goods being shipped out is coming in. So all that data at every place is not getting captured. And that is a kind of a challenge. The fourth challenge, which is very major, is manual data entry and how we are doing data entry. Because our people are not trained for it. We are not improving into it. And in spite of data available into a digital way, we want to do data entry into a manual way. I'll give a simple example. Today, government has come up with a new API by which all invoices generated against you, you can get it in a digital form. But what we'll do, we'll still do a data entry from the physical invoice that has come into the system. We'll not digitize it. And I have shown records to people, you can bring in and improve efficiency not by 10, 20, 50 or 100%, by 1,000%, 1,500 or 2,000% you can bring and improve efficiency. But certain amount of training of people or retraining of people is kind of thing. And last, means like our sales head kind of, he puts across this statement every time into every presentation of his. If compliance is a cost to you, try being non-compliant. If that is an option for anybody. This is a kind of, if I take a tax digitization overview, from 2017, the GST came in. And very honestly, when the GST came in, the two-way, means like Forget the 2A GSTR1, GSTR2 and the kind of acknowledging that invoice mechanism was put into place. And we all revolted against it. We don't want it. It is too cumbersome. Kaun jaake karega? If that system would have been allowed to be put into place, the problems that we are facing, many of them we would have not faced it. But as an industry, we were not visionary enough. As an industry, we were not kind of looking at it. And we are still looking at GST from the eyes of the VAT or the excise regime. We are not accepting that this is a digital tax. We are not accepting that every transaction, every movement of goods, everything is recorded at some place or the other digitally. And because we are not accepting that, we want to find loopholes into the mechanism that is happening. So that is a major area it is. If I take a global timeline, there are more than 100 countries who are going into a digital tax frame into next 7 years. And all big economies are going into that. So transaction level taxation data posting into the global scenario is a compulsion. E-invoicing is going to be compulsion. Some will follow the people framework, some will kind of modify their own frameworks and they will come onto it. But this is something which is going to come in. So this is a challenge which is there into that. Now, if you take next slide, please. If I take the GSTN angle of it, and there are three sources of data that we talk about. GSTN is there, NIC is there for e-way bill, and the IRPs are there. Is this the only source of data on which GSTN is relying? The answer is no. The FASTag is already integrated with it. So many other data, MCA data points have been integrated with it. The PAN verification has been integrated. There are so many other data points which has already been integrated with the GSTN network. So the type of data that they are getting it, and now they are also kind of what you call is a data provider to the account aggregator network. Similarly, they will also be able to get data from different FIUs, and if they want to kind of improve on the score that we were talking about, they can very well do it. So they will be able to get more parameters. If the necessary law clarification comes in, they will be able to do it. But looking at this multiple source of data which is available and the counterparty data that we need to do. So invoice generation has to be automated. If it's not automated, it's a problem. Invoice reporting has to be done, and you cannot every time override the entire data. So when you kind of go to the GSTN portal, override the data that was there onto it and upload with a fresh data of it, what is the kind of indication you're sending to the underlying system? I am changing the entire data. So it is a big red alert into those systems. You are inviting notices, whether you accept it or you don't, but that's a problem. हम बोले कि नहीं मैंने तो वही किया, just I correcting here, I just wanted to kind of ensure that this is done. But you need to have a systems which kind of compares between these two data, and you only upload the delta or you delete the data if it is not right. Now, how do I go and convince a backend engine or maybe a rule engine or an AI engine that I have generated the invoice, I have not consolidated in 48 hours, and now I'm deleting that from the GSTN portal? Means, what is the rationale? But this is something on our portal itself, we are seeing 20% of this happening on a regular basis. 20%. Now, that's a very alarming. And 3% of input tax credit is never getting matched. Now, but 3% in the context of 1,70,000 crores of tax, you put across and put that 3% amount, what that amount is. It's humongous. And the last another major problem, and it's not the last problem, but another major problem is we are not verifying our vendors at all. And why? Vendor के साथ interaction करना किसका है? Supply chain का है या procurement का? We have got nothing to do with it. Poor tax guys, they have no clue onto it whether this vendor is kind of even kind of on GSTN today or not. The procurement has nothing to do with it, and kind of something is totally wrong into the process because everybody is working in silos and they are not interacting to an extent. It is by creating more and more problems onto that. The third thing is e-way bills generated against you. Now, this was again one of the largest IT company case had come in. So that a very large amount of e-way bills were generated against that. So I want to transfer goods from one state to the another. I will generate a e-way bill in anybody's name, transfer the goods from the border and delete the e-way bill within 24 hours. I'll do that. Mal ship ho gaya. It's kind of a absolute transaction. This happens. Now, these are the problems. Today, industry is at least now open and recollecting, kind of reconciling the data with what they are selling outside. But they also need to start reconciling the data with the e-way bill generated against them, because that is the first alarm point of something going wrong from a fictitious and vendor towards you. And this is something, these data points are already available. So I fight with the tax authorities and I fight with GSTN, and we kind of argue with them that for the industry, this data is not available. But their argument is on a daily basis, this data was available to the industry. Why did the industry not take it and store it? So that's a reality. The data is available on a daily basis for it. But now if you want to get the data of 3 years or 4 years back, it's a problem. Yeah, you can only do it in a phases manner. But data, to get all your data on a today, it's not an issue. So that is something which the industry is not doing. Now, getting all this data into a data warehouse or a data lake, or we kind of call all these fancy terminologies. But the most important, store it in a place by which it is available for all future interactions. And that is something which really needs to be done, and kind of something that is there. Onboarding of vendors is very critical. Automating the inputs in terms of your purchases is very critical. And what we now talk about is kind of compliance before taking the goods into the factory to an extent. So doing a compliance before actually the other actions take place. And this is something which needs to be focused on to it. And then doing your reconciliation and ensuring that no easy ways are taken out. Because I have a GSTR 6 का इसमें data आ गया, इसका इसमें चला गया, एक state का दूसरे state में चला गया. Try and avoid those issues, because if you solve these issues in the first time, it is much easier. If you kind of solve into the next time, it's more difficult. Now, this is a question where every time I am being asked, is the government having access to the direct tax or indirect tax? Access? They already have it. There's no kind of a question of not having the access. If you ask me personally, both will converge. And this is my pure personal opinion, no communication or conversations, anything from the government side, but the way they are moving towards it, both these data points will converge. And you will, maybe in 5 years down the line or 7 years down the line, you may be filing a single return. You may not be filing 2 separate returns. And that is something which the industry is going to find it very difficult. And simple example that if we are talking about a transfer pricing valuation and if you are talking about a custom valuation, both are cross-purpose. But you will have to do both from the same source of data. And that is where the beauty of the thought process or the leadership will come in, that how do you converge onto that? And in that particular area, would you have to invest into technology? The answer is yes, you will have to invest into technology. Is the technology available right now to do this convergence? The answer is no, the technology is not available. Will the technology firms be able to bring this technology for an answer? The answer is no, they will not be able to bring it. It can only happen with partnership with industry. Industry and technology firms will have to work absolutely hand in hand if the solutions to all these challenges have to be brought in. Because without the learnings that the industry has and technology firms try to bring any solutions, they are not going to be working. So it has to be kind of a absolute partnership in which all these things will come in.
For sure.
Adapting to the regulatory changes, and how do you do that? It's like the way circulars are coming, the notices are coming, the kind of changes are coming, the judgments are coming in. How do you kind of do that? And this is here where a tax digitization and kind of aligning with government initiatives has to happen. So the way we have looked into and last my 6 years journey, and I feel it's very painful journey because, and I compare it with only one another thing in my life, is that all my life we have been into business of epoxies. So apart from software, we deal into epoxy resins, and that's a family business that has been there. And when the Kutch earthquake happened, we had to kind of go and consult so many building owners and others on how to repair their buildings. Now, as a professional, again over there, when you go to the building, you know that it is completely cracked. It cannot be repaired. And still the professionals are giving advice left, right, and center that put more epoxy into it, put more cement into it, it will strengthen, do the kind of steel casting of it and strengthen. And after, I think, 3-4 months of going for those site visits, I literally ran away. I said, I am not going for any further site visits because I cannot lie. And that is something, it's impossible to correlate to that situation. And when I used to go to Kutch, and I was only going to Kutch for the repairing of the temples to Bhuj actually, but that it was so painful. And from that time till date, I have not gone back to Bhuj in spite of so much kind of request coming. I am comparing that mindset to today, what is happening to industry. And it's like repeatedly we have told people that please be careful, please ensure that your data is available, please reconcile, please have a single source of truth. It's not done. And that is something which is the challenge that the industry is facing. So on one side, we can blame the government for so many notices are coming. And I don't justify the notices are coming because in many cases, the mind has not been applied in terms of what notices are coming. But the data mismatch is definitely there. And that is from our side. And that is something which is there. Second point is enabling systems enabled to detect fraud and tax evasion. Now, the government systems are extremely evolving for this. Today, they have far more data than they can consume. They have far more information than what they can consume. So that is a reality. But I was with one of the largest automotive supplier today morning in a meeting, and they said we need to evaluate our vendors also now very clearly. Because if we don't do it and we don't upscale them, we don't guide them, we don't hold their hands and kind of help them to improve, they will be in trouble, but we will be in a bigger trouble. And that is why that kind of hand holding of the ecosystem is extremely important. Third part is AI is here to stay. And I think the biggest, I would say, implications or the biggest downturn of the AI is going to be to the IT companies, not to anybody else. Why? Because coding, which has been our bread and butter, may not exist tomorrow. And that is the reason why AI is the biggest kind of a worry for the IT companies. But at the same time, it could genuinely be the biggest help for the industry. Because a lot of activities where you had a complete dependency on the IT partners or IT teams or the technology professionals can be done without taking their help and support. And adopting a right AI strategy within the organization will benefit into a much, I would say, a better. And one more point I would rather emphasize is that the company which adopts these technologies, the companies which modernizes it faster, the company kind of is forward looking into it. Those are the companies which will thrive much faster than anybody else. And that is something, it kind of again boils down to the board. It again boils down to the leadership into those organizations, how they take it up. But this is something, it is there. This is a topic from day one. If I take my 2016 slide, the first thing we were kind of talking about was a single source of data, a single source of truth, what we call it. And even after 6 years of this text, we are nowhere close to where we need to. And that's a factual challenge. Means everybody wants to have a, means like the text means like people, the big companies have a tax, what you call as warehouse, they have a finance warehouse. They also want to keep two separate source of truth. Means tax and finance, why would it? They have a two separate source of truth. But it's a reality because I have done so many architectural reviews of their tax implementation, and it's a reality that both are separate. So that single source of truth for all your data points is not coming in, and that is the biggest worry. Second point is enhanced data centralization is kind of a requirement. So in past we say it used to be challenging that we did not have enough source or enough kind of capacity to have the data at the same point, but it is not required. Again, with it, there is a second challenge that data localization is also equally important. So you cannot keep the entire world's data into a single place. You need to also localize and keep it country-wise. So that is also kind of a thing. Third thing is adapting automation efficiency, because that is very, very critical. More efficiency you bring into adoption of automation, that will help. And this does not mean that you are going to let go of people. I would put it across, you are going to retrain people for using their brains more and retrain people to do more, I would say, interesting work than kind of doing just manual data entry. And last but not the least, simplified audit tools, because today we don't audit the way we need to audit what is being done. And here also technology can play a major role, but audits are critical and audits are important. So somebody asked me that the data protection law and what impact it's going to have it. And even we had two conversations today morning. I said the first and foremost, every personal information has to be protected, either at the front level, back end, or anywhere. Second thing, today the personal level information which is being stored into our system is not encrypted, and that needs to be encrypted at the table level. This is a critical requirement. Third thing is the personal information encryption keys which are implemented. We need to store it in a kind of a storage device or a kind of HSM or a vault methodology, which is again secure in nature. And fourth thing, every place where we have used a personal information, we need to kind of have a log of it. So means like we go to a plant and they take our Aadhaar ID. So they have taken our consent to take our Aadhaar information to enter the plant. But they need to have a log that they have deleted that information when we have gone out of the plant. And this is something, if we are talking about the 250 crore penalty for one default, then I don't know what's going to happen and what is in storage for us. This is a very interesting slide, and this is something we had kind of adapted from a McKinsey kind of framework, which is there. That you have multiple different sources of data. So you kind of have the source systems. It could be internal source. It could be kind of your Excel files. It could be another data sources, ERPs, e-commerce platforms, everything. You kind of integrate those source systems through an extraction mechanism. It could be a flat file integration. It could be an API integration. It could be any kind of such integration and store into a data warehouse. Now today with the cloud solutions available, storing into a data warehouse has become a very simple activity. And preparing those data warehouse for storing that information is also much, much easy. Then you create a processing tier. So like whatever tax calculation needs to be done, it could be a tax processing mechanism. Whatever you need to do for transfer pricing, it could be a different mechanism. What could be done for customs could be separate. Even for MIS reporting, the processing could be separate. Consumption data you want to extract, that could be separate. And then you have a reporting tier onto it. And the front could be analytics. Now we have taken this conversations much more in advance. It is not put over into this slide, but where do you use AI? And into the first two tiers, if you use AI, it will have the maximum benefit of it. You should never use AI for your data storage part or kind of where the actual data storage is there, because you don't know what will happen to that data to extent. Because today we are using AI. On one side, we are talking about so much amount of security, but how much amount of our data we are actually giving that AI to AI engines to train, nobody knows about it. And that is why you need to have a very careful AI policy defined within the organization by which you really secure the data that is being stored and you use onto the front end part of it. So these are a kind of a two mechanism onto it. When I talk purely on the taxation point of view, we are not securing the data really the way we should be securing, and it is kind of means like you should actually do audits of your ASP providers as well, because that data is being sold to the financial institutions in a rampant way. Means everybody is buying this data for further financial analysis, and that's a huge cases. And we have personally been involved into 2-3 such audits, and we have identified that this is a misuse beyond a point. So your data is not going and becoming a public information into the industry is something you should be very, very careful about. Now, another big term which is being used into the technology point of view is hyper automation into text technology. And how do you use it? And like hyper automation as a word has been used into the RPSNs. Every organization bought licenses from Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism or UiPath, and those licenses never got to use. They never saw the benefit of those licenses, or it gave a very minimalistic benefit to the promises it is. So don't restrict the use of hyper automation technology only to bots, because bots as a technology should be the last course of action, not the first course of action. Means it is the most ineffective way of how you can do a thing. It is more closer to a human than to closer to a, I would say, a digital way of doing things. So that is not should be used a priority, but in the areas where you do not have an option, you cannot digitally connect between two areas, you use it. The one particular thought and one particular phrase or something that you should have in mind is you need to establish a digital connectivity between source to destination and destination to source. So from your basic transaction which is happening, which is the first source of transaction, to the government and back from the government side to your original source, a digital connectivity has to be established. Anywhere that is breaking, you will have a problem. And more you kind of close this digital connectivity and go closer to it, the ease of operations will come in and the issues will be much less. So go to the source, rectify it and move on to it. So that is what we call as end-to-end automation. So establishing a digital connectivity. Second thing is use hyper automation basically for decision making. Because today, most of the technology we use is just for reporting or just for kind of conquering the numbers that we have, but we don't use it for actual decision making. So it is kind of doing that. The technologies, the OCRs, we used it, but we never, and kind of it failed badly. Everybody suffered from it and nobody wants to use the OCR technology more. But when we talk about OCR with IDP capabilities and the digital connectivity and the RPA capabilities, it kind of provides a much more capability onto it. So that is something which we do. Workflow orchestration is something which has to be done, and dynamic decision making and cross-functional integrations are these two more areas which you should do a deep dive onto it. But these are the kind of things if you use into it, then actual hyper automation in text technology comes into play and you will get great amount of benefits out of it. And this is kind of the most interesting topic which always comes into the technology conversation. Where should we use AI and where we should not use AI? One thing is automated data entry. You should use AI because this is not a good use of a human intelligence to do data entry. We have too much amount of tools to do that. Predictive analysis of whatever it is. And people say that, and my CFO only asked me last week, okay, you are talking so much amount of AI. Predict me what my sales is going to be 1 year down the line and 2 years down the line. I'm sorry. AI cannot predict what your sales is going to be 1 year down the line. But if you want AI to predict what your sales is going to be from the amount of hours that the team has worked on to it, 1 week down the line or 1 month down the line, yes, we can predict it. On a daily basis, I can predict it. I can't give you any prediction based on only the data points that are available, which will actually give you 1 year down the line AI. So AI is not going to help you into that. Third is fraud detection. And these are kind of tools which should actually be used for fraud detection, because even on the BFSI segment, the amount of fictitious bank statements which are being submitted, amount of fictitious documents that are being submitted. And even by just kind of doing a scan on the PDF document, you can identify there are so many areas where the fraud has been done. The fonts would have been changed, the pixel size would have been changed, the distance between the two fonts would have been edited. There is so much amount of nuances that can brought into fraud detection, and it should be used into. Chatbots for text queries. This is something we are kind of trying to work quite closely, that we should bring in a chatbot which will automate and reply for the notices to actually do that. Nowhere close to it, but it's a dream come true if it happens. And the objective is not reply to the notices, also extract the data from our systems, backend systems, and give that data. It is that. I'll say we'll get there someday. So I'm sure about it. And I and Badri had a good conversation around that. Automated compliance.
Department doesn't have any bot for issuing notices, right?
They have many bots. So
They have.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, so many wouldn't have been possible.
possible.
And income tax has got no.
Yeah. And somebody asked me a recent question that please suggest to GSTN that the portal has to now behave like the income tax portal. And I think when the new income tax portal came in, we all know what happened to it. But I had a very easy answer to it. GSTN technology is 6 years or 7 years old. Income tax portal's technology is just 2 years old. So in 4 years, the technology can travel so much. Now, this is where from a corporate perspective, the investment into technology. And I had another joke with another CTO friend. And I told him that 70% of your digital budget is being taken away by your ERP vendors, because they are and there is nothing digital about it, but it's taken away by the ERP vendors. Another 15 to 20% is taken over by Microsoft and the OS of the world. So actual budget for digitalization is not even 10%. और उसमें से भी आपका आधा तो hardware में चला जाता है. So what digitization you are going to do? And unless and until you figure out how you are going to reduce this license cost, you are not going to digitize your organization. Automation compliance monitoring is very critical. Tax planning optimization is something which we should do that. And cross-border tax compliance is another area, because this is where the biggest challenges into cross-border issues are going to come in. And with now data being shared across different kind of regulators, this is going to be a major pain point. And blockchain, wherever you can use it, but it has its pros and cons, but at least it has some benefits into certain areas where you use it. So I think this is all from my side, open to any questions that you have. And hope at least I've been able to share some insights into the topics that we were trying to cover today.
How you see that blockchain is going to contribute for the GST? In what way the government is thinking to use blockchain technology? Because often we are hearing that input tax credit mechanism will be now through blockchain technology.
See, blockchain has a first deficiency that it is not still efficient enough to work as strongly as a normal database. It's slower in terms of its implementation. So that's the first challenge. Second is, what benefit am I going to get into a blockchain? I'm not going to get much benefit from the GST standpoint. Overall, even in the initial days, kind of blockchain-based architectures were suggested to the GST thing. And when blockchain will store a hash into a blockchain, here also we are comparing a hash, everything. And when I'm saying that it is being under the GSTN servers, into the GSTN data protection, then those hash are not going to be tampered. So I don't expect somebody going into the GSTN servers and tampering those hash at a transaction level to kind of change data. It's not going to happen. So here I don't see a major benefit in terms of it. But one very interesting use case is coming, that on which particular invoice the banks have financed. Now, if you take this particular invoice and if that goes into a blockchain, then multiple banks will not finance the same invoice. So the fraudulent transactions, if they are put into blockchain, that is that. The agreements, the actual agreements, if you put into blockchain, then comparing any kind of change that has been done into it becomes much easier into it. So these are the areas where I would say blockchain should be used. into a very fast-paced financial transactions, I don't see that blockchain will be able to give that much amount of benefits today. But it's an evolving technology, and I sincerely feel that something major will come out. With quantum computing coming in, maybe kind of the speed issues may kind of.
I would like to understand how GST works in the case of e-commerce platforms. If it is not outside the.
Sure.
You have an e-commerce platform owner, you have suppliers and service providers on one side and the customers on the other side. How does the GST work there?
It works in both ways. So e-commerce platform can generate an invoice on behalf of the supplier. So they have that capabilities to do that. And even kind of now they can also generate an invoice for a non-registered GST provider as a new kind of API that has been given to them. But most of the e-commerce platform owners are generating the invoice on the supplier's GST and ID only. So they are not kind of doing it. And they are facing challenges on both ways because you need to do e-commerce transaction with a great amount of speed. And then only kind of you'll get the eyeball of the person who is buying it. So many of these transactions miss out. Actually do that, and a true up has to be done into that. And with this restriction of 30 days coming into play for doing it, regularization of the invoicing, it has become a big point. And I think I work with both of the big ones so that we work with 10, 15 of the big ones, but the biggest two we work with them. And their volumes itself has outgrown capability of GST into to take care of it on a monthly basis. So the JSON files are also not getting generated in some cases. So these are the challenges which they are facing. Same, my maximum times goes into kind of coming up with a kind of innovation or a solution by which the systems can take care of it. And again, I go back to that the minimum amount of modifications you do at each level, that is better. But when you're talking about 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 5 rupee and 7 rupee transaction, I don't know what transaction volumes we are talking about today.
What is your suggestion on that? And the invoicing is it better from the supplier or from the e-commerce platform?
I would prefer from e-commerce
platform.
Because at least you have a control on what you are doing. The true up from the suppliers is a major challenge today.
True, sir, because just to add with your permission, the person really executing the transaction is the e-commerce. So it is always good that it will augur well if they are allowed to raise the invoices. So thank you for that. There are a couple of things. In fact, I was making a note of that also. You say, sir, 3%. In one of the things you mentioned, 3% of the input tax credit is going unmatched.
So I would say when we kind of promote a score, and this score is dependent on only two things. How regularly a person has filed GST-R1, how regularly a person has filed 3. And we take the last 12 months of filing. So we have this data that is there for all taxpayers from day 1 till today. Now, the challenge comes into this particular process is that we have observed that around 15% of the registered taxpayers are on a score below 50. And that is that they fall into the default categories. Out of that data, when we looked at it, true up is done, true up is not done. 3% never filed that. And in another interesting point, we have seen that most of these guys are the captive vendors who work within the plant, or these are the vendors who work for projects at a different states. So kind of somebody is laying a pipeline in the state of Rajasthan and a vendor has registered himself over there. Then that is an area where they are kind of not filing this returns. So 3% is something which is completely where the revenue leakage is there. And this is the data not from the government source. I'll put it very clearly. This is the data which we have observed from our board.
Sure.
The 3% is very.
That's a huge number.
Huge number.
Value-wise
It's a huge number.
Just to give it the flavor of GST conditions for me to take credit, then that is what do you say, a bonus for the government.
40,000, 50,000 crores.
No, for 4 to 5.
3%.
3%.
3% of 1,50,000
1,50,000
per month, you know.
Per month.
Yeah, talking annual.
Yeah.
I have a question. Today, the finance department or the accounting department have to upgrade. Normally, a BCom student or MCom student or graduate or chartered accountant, they used to be the people who used to do the accounting up to audit and balance sheet. Now that the tech has come in, these guys do not know tech. They don't know tech. Those guys do not know accounts. For bigger companies, no issues. For SMEs and small companies, getting a techno accountant is very difficult because they're all into bigger houses. How do we mitigate this? So that's why the compliance is going for a task. And if you want to outsource, it's going to be a bomb.
So
This
I
is a
just
big
put it-
problem in the industry.
Absolutely, and I put it across very simply. See, like the head of the family, like we are into a joint family. Who takes care of the entire family? The head of the family takes care.
The wife.
The wife. We take into the same segment into this. The larger industries have the owners to take care of the ecosystem. And today, kind of for a large organization to negotiate with a Zoho or a TVA with a Tele or something like that, for a larger platform to support their vendors, it is much easier to be done. And then it streamlines the entire ecosystem. So many companies are providing them the solutions to their vendor ecosystem, to their suppliers to do that. We are working with one large organization and they have kind of created a fulfillment center into the factory. So the vendor can come in, the team is available, which will help them to comply. And these are fulfillment centers, very interestingly done, which helps into complying. So unless and until we take care of the vendor ecosystem, it will die out. And today, very honestly, everybody says that the big companies are getting bigger. The SME, MSMEs are getting shattered. And I would put it across some of the growth that we are happening, maybe a kind of a transfer of an unorganized economy to organized economy. Also maybe a transfer that we may be seeing. But tools are available. And if you are having a 5 crore turnover, the tools are not that expensive that you cannot do it. And the younger generation is very smart. So if you can kind of even have them work on few hours a month or something like that, they can do this work. And this is an area which is government is extremely concerned about. And whatever is going to come, that auto population of GST returns is going to come in. Mm-hmm. And that will help them to kind of just verify the data that is auto populated and you just file. But then you have to pay the tax of it. That is where the failure comes. So tools are available. Now everybody is using a mobile phone. Everybody is using a smartphone.
A number of apps are there.
And everybody is into the most remotest area through UPI, through a QR code, you are able to make a payment for a what you call is makai bhi khate hai, so we are able to make our cup of tea ka bhi 10 rupiya de pa. Nariyal. So we are getting it there. So that same applies over. And today I think very interesting thing came in. HDFC Bank has tied with some foreign company and they've came up with a payment mechanism which has to be used into the remote areas. And all the banks have been asked to use that technology to do that. So innovation is happening non-stop. So a person who wants to do it will be able to do it. But if I don't want to do it and default on it, nobody can.
But MSME SSA contribution is very less than you see in this 1.7 lakhs. So government is not going to make a policy. It is a eyewash, whatever they say that for MSME, I have framed the rules and all. But the thing is that we cannot talk so much about MSMEs and SSIs as such when you see the numbers actually, because the big players are only the contributors. So the government policies will be towards them only. For these people, yes, that encouragement will be there. That's only the namesake. But if you really want to see on paper, it will be there. That's it.
So just I'll take this opportunity. I'll just maybe for all the members, for the benefit of all the members. Sir, how do you suggest we should look at? There is this role engine, there is this AI, there is this the you don't like it, but let me tell you, the Excel files that are there, right? So at what aspect in GST, from a compliance point of view, from a assessment being ready for it point of view, at what stage do we use what? Some notes from you, sir.
Very simple. In our school, college days, or your graduation, post-graduation days, we had to start somewhere. So I'll put it across, start somewhere. There is no magic wand which is going to come and do every work for you. So you, as a taxpayer, the person who is going to go into the chair is the person who has registered with the department. So he has to at least be responsible for ensuring that this is the beginning. Nobody else is going to face the pain that he is going to face the pain. So just start with it. If you feel you are small enough to manage in an Excel sheet, manage in an Excel sheet. But that Excel sheet should be a single source of truth, common Excel sheet. It cannot be multiple lines to everybody's. Second thing is, these are 5-7 data points around which the government is asking questions. Ensure that on a monthly basis, you have the data points reconciled and ready. Why do you want to worry about if the notice comes in or if it doesn't come? And
very well said, sir.
More you kind of larger you are, you will have to invest in it. There is no other way. And just by investing, see, our own observation is that in our portal, we have given around 4,000, 5,000 different features. The average features being used are not more than 10 or 15. And whatever we kind of do training, keep on training, more training, still the usage is not going increase. And if they start using what they already is there, things will ease out.
All right. All right. Sir, is there any number that you have in mind, from how much should really go into a technology budget? If I'm a 500 crore turnover or 1,000 crore company.
Very simple answer. Then this is kind of one of the slides in one of the presentations I had made. The answer is very simple. As long as you are on the par in terms of your data availability with the government, you need to invest.
Okay.
If a smart accountant can do it on an Excel sheet and being ready, you need to invest into a smart account. Trust it. But you have to be on par with the data expectations of the government. So unless and until you reach that level, you need to invest.
All right. All right. All right.
Somebody
have a question from somebody in the audience. Just check who it is.
Mr. Ravichandar.
Ravichandar.
So please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Ravichandar, sir. We are all
ears. Sir, it is a nice session. Good afternoon, and it is a nice session hearing you about the technology it's required in all functions, not only tax function. It has to be holistic. That is one thing. And you are telling about 3% of input tax credit being lost because of mismatch. Okay.
Yes.
Normally, it is what I call suffering is by buyer. Have you seen anywhere buyer is recovering that same from seller through technology?
Yes. We are seeing that recovering from sellers through technology, and that is kind of happening very regularly. But you have to bifurcate into two segments over here. One is the SME, MSME categories. So the large corporates, they are trying to kind of do that. In SME, MSME, if it is there, again, you have to pay them within 45 days. Otherwise, you will not be able to take the kind of exemption of it. So into income tax, so you pay them. But in that particular case, if the SME, MSME is not giving them the money thing through the recovery process, you kind of raise a debit note or blacklist the vendor and do that. That is one part. But for the larger organizations, people are literally kind of deducting the GST amount and paying them net of GST if they are not a compliant vendor. So this is something which is happening regularly. And there is another mechanism which has been given by the GSTN portal. They have a notification kind of a API available. So what this notification API helps you to do is that whenever you kind of inform anything to the other party or a vendor through this notification module, he will see that into his GSTN screen. And this also at the back end is being kind of analyzed by the GSTN team as well. So more you kind of raise these issues through the notification module, it will be better, and that taxpayer also gets into the notice. So a taxpayer cannot say that I did not receive the email or I did not get it on the WhatsApp, because in 1 month, at least 2 times, he definitely opens his GSTN portal. So this particular information is it. So more you kind of increase these conversations, more you go into that, the recovery is definitely happening. And people are trying to do multiple different ways of getting this recovery. And even some large organizations have made us write a report by which whatever this kind of recovery which is not going to happen, it also has to be presented into the board meeting that this is the kind of write-off which we are going to have because of the non-recovery of the input tax.
But sir, you are mentioning about one API, but how many of the people know that such an API exists and we have to make use of it?
It's a public, I think it's on the government portal, it's available. So any technology provider you're working.
If you read any of those API notifications and all that, no, it's more technical and people do not know that exactly after you listen to the whole thing, this is the use of the training. So can it be made into a simple language which can be understood by
more than me? This association would be the right people to kind of raise it to the government.
you are more closer to them.
No, they have told us very clearly. Even if we have a very valid point for them to consider, get it through association.
So I think Badri, we have to
get some points.
Yeah, you should always kind of
Make it simpler and then
make it
communicate.
simpler and kind of
API communication, if you see, sir, it's more technical and it confuse you. At the end,
And nobody will reply. Yeah.
you will not know that actually the API is used for this purpose.
The Karnataka is second largest GST paying state in India, and the finance minister is from Bangalore. So we are reasonably connected, I can say.
We'll
you
make
should-
setting. This is
you should represent it
yeah.
more. And I would say the finance ministry and the office of the finance ministry are extremely capable.
That I
people.
agree.
They understand
Absolutely.
things
And
very
And
well.
then respond also.
And they respond.
And
And
yes, they
even if
respond.
they are sometimes not able to bring in the changes so fast, but at least the response is super.
Hmm.
Because I am lucky enough to be able to make some presentations to them sometimes, and the quality of questions that they raise is excellent.
Particularly, I think you talked so much about single source of truth, but Ramakrishna has been there because Raman Lekha Krishna never know.
We had Ramchandra,
Yeah.
Ramchandra who had a question.
Yes, yes.
Everything is done.
That's
Ravichandran.
Ravichandra.
Ah,
Okay,
yeah.
over question.
Boy,
Yeah.
3%.
Okay. Sir,
One
maybe-
more question.
Ravi.
Thank you. Hey, go ahead.
You are in mute.
Ravi, we are not able to hear you. Okay, maybe in the meanwhile.
Yeah.
Sir, something on chat
We are
GPT.
back.
We can't really stay away. I mean, no discussion is complete without that expression, right? So today, if it is not, it is frequently used, if not all pervasive in all cases, etc. Do you think that is a good enough approach to find a solution, find an answer to the question that we have in mind? And because let me tell you, department is also using it. Tax office also uses that to be able to respond to our contentions a lot of times. So what is your take on that, sir? This kind of approach.
See, one thing is, without using AI, will we be able to respond to, and I will not restrict it only to ChatGPT, because now you have ChatGPT, Bard, Q, n number of them are there. So this entire AI ecosystem, I'll say, do we have a option of not using it? So we don't have an option of not using it. But the data privacy part, because when you are putting your specific information on a ChatGPT to kind of do that, it is training the engine, and that data is becoming to an extent public.
Right.
Now you have to be very, very careful, because even in our mobile phone, every application by default asks you for all permission,
And we say yes.
and we say yes. Now that means that we are digitally so connected today that there is no secret. So very honestly, I would say that Means if there is something which is there, which you want to keep it secret, then it should not be digitally anywhere.
There is nothing called secret or private in the
Private,
digital
yeah,
space.
But again, the protection of the personal information, protection at the transaction level information is extremely critical. And I am seeing on a daily basis, it is being compromised beyond a point.
True, sir. True. Maybe I'll take the same thing, the previous one. You said there are cases where the transaction level data is being sold to financial institutions. Sir, how do you see the DPDP, the Digital Data Protection Law that has come some time back?
These are two kind of sets to it, and DPDP actually should bring in a kind of mental. But on one side, we say to the financial institutions, you are taking credit decisions without looking at proper data. Proper data is not available to the financial institutions through the authorized channel. And for that, government has made a mechanism, the account aggregator network is there for the authorized channels by which the data should be presented. Unless and until that network matures to a level, the institutions will always want more data and they will want to know more about everybody else. Now, from a standpoint that I want to make easy money or somebody wants to make easy money, they will kind of go through this circular transactions and do that. So that is something which is very, very challenging. And I honestly feel that more these government systems evolve, more the structures come into the way the data is being stored, presented and recorded, all these issues will go down considerably.
Sir, you may have noticed in the last 2 years and even earlier to that in a slightly subtle way, as a taxpayer, my consent or confirmation or permission, for want of better words, the government has to take before even government can share that data with anybody else. Do you see that with DPDP in a different way, sir? See, because what is my legal recourse? I'll give you an example. I'll give you a straight. This is a live example. We were appearing before one of the tax authorities, which is in Delhi. It is about anti-profiting. Okay, we had given all the. I was representing the company, saying there is no really profiteering that has really happened here. There is no additional credits that have come, for which transaction level data had to be given to the authorities. So they've just sent it to the complainant. They've just attached the same file and sent it to the complainant. So and once a complainant receives, who would have possibly filed a complaint?
Absolutely a competitor.
No, he would have filed an application with the anti-profiteering authority to say 20 rupees discount I should have gotten on paneer butter masala I didn't get. So what level of application of mind can I expect that this is personal data and that tax and that the complainant should not share it any further?
I think this is something like I can't comment much on to why this has been shared or what it has been shared. But if you ask me personally, such data should not be shared. It should not be shared.
Sir, I have known of some cases, especially in IT, where the IT department directly sends a debit note to the bank and then the money is debited from your account. That's possible.
Yeah, because it is inbuilt in law itself.
Yeah.
So what data sharing of a certain level to the bureaus, data sharing to other institutions, what is made provision into law, that is going to be shared. But you also expect that maturity on the other side on what that is. And that are very secured environments. So like when we work with the bureaus, the type of security they are put into place is unimaginable. So that is something where the data gets processed. So that is very good. But kind of this is some amount of data which is lying in people's laptops and it is going crazy. That's something which is very
So Ravi sir has a question. Ravi sir.
Yeah. One more question, sir. You have told about 3% of mismatches, input tax credits getting lost. Cyber frauds are the thing now. I think Bangalore has got maximum cyber frauds, cyber crimes reported. How much of cyber crimes have reported in the GST and
I don't have any such data onto per se, so I will not be able to comment about it because see, there is no way to find out how much of such data, and we were talking about the same thing from people's laptop, from different service providers, data set, it has gone because you do not know what has happened to that data. When the money goes away from the bank, you know that. But I take somebody's business data and use it for a competitive advantage. He will not know it unless and until it actually comes out into the open.
Correct.
So it is next to impossible to track this kind of leakages today. But having said that, these leakages are not happening, I don't believe it. It's happening.
It is. And you will never know until the damage is caused.
Absolutely.
True. Are there any questions? So I think somebody has put in the chat. If it's a question, just read it out. No?
How do we overcome?
How do we
How we
work on
overcome
the
the unnecessary notices that taxpayers receive from GST department using technology. We are receiving notices on tax demand and interest, which is 5 years old.
I just have one say. Are this kind of a genuine or not genuine? Unless until we go through the process, nobody can know. And it is a tax department's kind of its onus is on them to kind of issue this notices. So somewhere or other, we'll have to learn to live with it instead of kind of being upset or frustrated about it. We'll have to learn to live with it, and we'll have to put the right kind of mechanisms at our place that we are efficiently able to respond to it.
Unfortunately, there is no shortcut to it.
There is no shortcut.
We have to go through that process.
Yes, there is no shortcut.
So Prakash sir, you have anything? So maybe we started this discussion. I also mentioned about one of the Allahabad High Court rules where, court has said, are we becoming slaves of technology? How do you see that in the GST context, sir? You also mentioned, which is a reality, I agree, saying very soon the notice that the returns are going to be auto-populated. All I have to do is pay that amount. Or possibly there'll be a bot which will say, okay, pay that amount also. So where are we headed to, sir?
So the question is, and I just don't look at it from the GST point of view. We have started becoming slaves of technology. See, most of the time, and it's like when we were in school, college time, our class periods used to be 45 minutes. And at least 30 minutes was our attention span. 30 minutes. Last week, I kind of put across a way forward document of our organization and published it to the entire organization. And then we had a town hall and asked them a question, how many of you read it? Not more than 30%. And I had made a blunder at the end of the document. I had kind of put across some information which I should have not, because it was under leadership team conversation, which should not have been part of the thing. I made a mistake of not removing that. Nobody knows. So today's attention span is less than 30 seconds. Now, if you are able to kind of pass on the message within that 30 seconds, it will be accepted. The challenge is that whatever gets auto-populated, somebody will have to put in a system by which you verify it and you don't kind of submit it, because it's something. Today, see, income tax, the data that is coming to us, so many transactions, we ourselves don't know that we have done these transactions. So it is coming in on a personal level. And that is a challenge. So just saying yes on a clicking yes onto it, and that mindset today we have without looking, thinking or reading, we are just saying yes to it. That is going to be the biggest problem or a pain point going further. So we are becoming slaves of technology. We have to protect ourselves from becoming.
True, sir. Anything else, sir?
This
rationalization that is it happening or not, sir? Because there are so many times that we hear that they are constituting a committee. Committee is asking for additional time and all that. But certainly the highest rate is something which has to be seriously looked into.
No idea about it.
Retraction.
My knowledge about it is as much as what you said. No more.
The selection of GST also between EV, hybrid, and a lot of things are happening, which is not all, you know, in
But
the right way.
these are kind
Yeah.
of promoting that.
Mm.
But I feel that if you want more compliance, you have to simplify things.
Yeah.
That, and you will get more compliance.
But now it is time for us because that we are clocking consistently more than 1.5 lakhs every month. So I think that retractionalization is something which can be taken up.
Apparently, sir, I don't recollect the exact numbers right now, but while we may be collecting 1.7 lakh crores consistently over the last quite a few months now, and that is how it's going to be going forward, we are short of what was expected at the beginning when GST was implemented.
I don't think that we have
No,
expected this much.
No, not in terms of collections,
Huh.
but more importantly in terms of the tax impact to the whole economy as a whole. You know, where what was expected as the revenue or how it will convert into various other numbers when the rate was pegged at 18. We are short by whatever that number is. We are short by about 1.8 or close to 2%. So we still have some distance to go before we can expect 18 to come down, is what I understand.
But I think we have covered that. And why I am looking from a different perspective. I think the amount of tax deficit that the government needs to pay to individual states is no more there in picture.
Yeah, that is
so that is apparently gone. So that means that we have crossed that threshold. Somewhere we have crossed that threshold.
That is the reason, even if you see the next financial commission's agenda also, it has been shortened to a large extent.
But anyway, if on the lighter side, if the 1.3 lakh crores notices that have been issued to online lending, etc., if that comes, we would have exceeded all numbers. If that
We need not go by all that. Single, I think it is online gaming. If that is settled, you just see the number.
No,
It will never come in.
that is a misnomer.
Yeah, we can see that there is a spat between the ASG as well as revenue secretary.
All that, sir. Sir, my turnover is 100. You are asking me to pay 150 as tax.
Yes.
My turnover is 100.
That too retrospectively.
So leave that. That's okay. That's okay. Sir, I'm sure. Thank you so much once again, sir. Quite a few takeaways, I should say, without doubt. While we spoke quite a bit on the 3%, because it is huge. As you can analyze the figures, it is more than 75,000 crores a year. So that's not a small number for in any kind of a budget, for that matter, whether it is center or state or anywhere. It is never a small number. But certainly it gave us a perspective today in terms of what are the other, I'll possibly put it this way. When GST came in, we had to repeatedly tell ourselves saying GST is here to stay, right? Today we have to tell ourselves, look, technology is here to stay as far as GST is concerned. So the sooner, the faster we kind of digest that, we will be able to do what you said, in the sense, not just budget for the licenses, which is about 90-95% of the budget, possibly a little more, where really there is mind that goes into how to use the technology piece. That's a very important thing, sir. While you didn't give a number in terms of, look, what kind of budget number that is to go, I like the answer that you gave. I mean, you decide what you want, and that's how the budget attempt a zero-based budget. Yeah, attempt a zero-based. That's very, very important, sir. Very, very important. Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful.
I think discussing with you. Thank you so much. Very candid conversation. Really appreciate it. And sometimes it is better that we are able to speak quite freely into such forums. That's really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And on behalf of BCIC,
May I request our president to please give the momentum to.
Thank you. Come, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you.
So we will have a group photo.
Yeah.
Come, talk.
Bani, sir.
Thank you.
But yes, one more definitely an important thing you mentioned is, I can't agree more with you, is engage with the vendors. It is a
Because
very,
it's a
very
kind of,
important thing.
without that, it will not.
There's nothing.
See, it's finally our responsibility to bring up the ecosystem and help them.
No, you were talking about GST fulfillment system.